Hello everyone, Jonathan here from M Games, and in this video we're going to be making barriers so that the player has some protection from enemy lasers. Let's get started. So first off, I'm going to leave a link in the description to my GitHub page. That's where you're going to go to the episode 08 barriers, go to code, and then download zip. That just makes sure that you have all the project files from our last video. Then we're going to open up Godot, and I'm going to go to Assets, Scenes, Levels, Level 1 Scene. So the first thing we're going to do is right-click on Level, Add Child Node, Sprite, Create, and right-click on Sprite, Add Child Node. This one is going to be Area 2D. And right-click on Area 2D, Add Child Node, search for Collision Shape 2D. Then, inside of Sprite, we're going to need to create a texture. Or if you downloaded the project, it will be under Sprites, and then there's going to be a right-click on Sprite, new folder, barrier. And then inside of barriers there will be an image. So another thing I'm going to leave in the description is a link to Pixelorama. This is a pixel art app, and it can run directly from your web browser. So I'm just going to scroll down here, I'm going to go full screen, and I'm just going to move that window. I'm going to click on New, then we're going to go 8 on the height, and I'm also going to go 8 times 3 on the width, for a 24 pixel. And we're just going to say barrier. Then we're just going to go up to View, Show Grid, go to Edit, and Preferences. Where it says Rectangular Grid Width, we're going to change this to 8, and change the height to 8 as well. Close. And then we're going to change the color to white. Now, if I hold Shift, and I drag with the left mouse button, we can draw straight lines or diagonal lines. Then I'm going to select the Fill tool, and we'll just fill that in. I'm going to go back to the Pencil tool, holding Shift, and fill that in. And I believe I can copy this. I'm going to press Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V. I'm going to move that over. And I'm not sure if I can really... Okay, I can just scale it like that. And there we go. Press Enter, and everything should work. Now I'll just go to File, Export As, and then we're going to save it as barriers01 PNG, and click OK. I'm just dragging that in to the barriers folder, and Godot didn't know that I was hovering over that. So now we have our image. I'm going to select our sprite, and I'm going to drag the barriers into the texture. I'm just going to zoom in to the top left corner. And there's our barrier image. I'm going to go and select region, enabled, and width is going to be 8, and height is going to be 8, and if we change this to 8, then we're going to end up with the middle. If I change it over to 16, we'll end up with the right angle, but I'm just going to leave it at 0 for the left angle. Next thing we're going to do, select the collision shape. I'm going to create a new rectangle shape 2D. It is twice the size that it needs to be, so I'm going to set this down to 4 by 4, and now it fits our object. I'm going to select our sprite, area 2D, and collision shape 2D, then right click, and save branch as scene. We're going to go to Assets, Instances, right click, new folder, call this one Barriers, and change this to barrier left. Save. Also notice that whenever you have a sprite selected and it has region enabled, you can go down to the texture region window and then you should be able to zoom in on it. And then you have the option of snapping, and we can do a grid snap, and we can set the grid snap to 8 by 8. And then you can draw out what you want to select. So it makes things a little easier and less having to know exactly what your texture regions are. Anyway, I'm just going to close that window for now. I'm going to zoom back out. Now I'm going to select the move tool, and I'm going to move this down. I'm going to hold Control, and notice that it will try and snap to different objects. Not entirely perfect, but it's alright. Now keep in mind, later on we're going to use the same method we used for the enemies, to where we can just draw out the tile map. This is just for testing purposes only right now. There are a few things we need to do now. We need to check what our player and our enemy lasers' collision layers are. We're going to need to add those collision layers to our barrier object. We're also going to need to add an animation setup, so that whenever our block collides with them, it will play an animation of an explosion. Then we're also going to need to adjust a tile map to match our barrier objects, so we can just draw them out on the screen, and it takes away a lot of work on our side. So let's get started with that. Let's open up the barrier object scene. And then with our sprite selected, I'm going to create a new script. We are going to have a template of no comments, and then go over to our scripts folder, and we'll just right click, new folder, barriers, and then just rename this to barrier 01. And create. Let's copy some variables from our enemy 01 script so we can get our animation setup going. Let's just zoom to the top. We're going to select the explosion sprite list, Control C, and Control V. Go back to the enemy 01. Then we're going to scroll down, and we're going to copy our isAlive and our animation variables. Go back to our barrier and paste that in. For the barrier, I'm going to remove the ready function. It's not needed here. Then we're going to go back to the enemy. Now we're going to scroll down here to the process function. And we're going to copy that as well as the animate function. Control C, go over here and Control V. There are going to be a few things we're going to have to remove. We don't need the global aliens, nor do we need to change to the game over scene when it's removed. It's just not needed. If we scroll up a little bit, we do not need to have the animate, and we also don't need to have that, so let's just select all this code and remove it. And we're going to change this to barrier, and instead of else here, we're going to check if not alive. So this is going to check if alive is false, and then we're going to run through all the variables we did before, and it's going to play the explosion sprite list. Now what we need to do is connect our area 2D to the script. So let's select the area 2D, go to the node and signals, and area entered. We're going to connect, and we're just going to say area entered. Yeah, that's fine. On area entered, connect. First thing we're going to need to do is check if the player laser and the enemy laser collide with this area. So let me just select this, and then if area dot is in group, and this is going to be player laser. I'm going to copy this and say or enemy laser. We're going to say alive equals false, and temp death state equals true. Then we're going to type area.get parent .q free. This will remove the laser whenever it collides with this object. So let's go back to area 2D, go to the inspector. So I'm going to change what layer this object is on. The barrier is going to be over here. So the mask is detecting what other object's layer that we're going to be able to collide with. So I know that the player laser is on 3 and the enemy laser is on 5. We can double check this by going into Instances, Lasers, Player Laser, select the Area 2D, and in the inspector, we're on layer 3. And the enemy, select the Area 2D, you can see that the layer is on 5. But it can collide with the player, which is on layer 2. Playtest the scene. And if I shoot it, the player laser is removed as well as the barrier. But there was no explosion. So let's go back to the barrier, select our sprite, and we will add 4 layers to our explosion. Go over to Sprites, Effects, Explosion 01, and then just drag these into the list. And we'll save, go back to level 1, playtest the scene, and then if we shoot it, it will play an explosion. Although, it didn't play quite right, but that's what we got. Next up, let's create a tile map setup so that we can just draw in what we want and not need to place everything manually. First off, I'm going to delete the sprite. You no longer need it. And I'm going to select the enemies, and I'm going to press Ctrl and D to duplicate. I'm going to change this to barriers. Change this to barrier tile map. I'm going to select barriers and click on the script icon. I'm going to click File, Save As, go to Scripts, and Barriers. And we're going to call this one Barrier Controller. Click Save. And I want to double check to make sure that I did not. Aha. So the enemies also changed as well. So let's file Load, Assets, Scripts, Enemies, Enemy Controller, and click Open. Then we're going to go into Barriers and click the script. And we're now in the barrier controller. So there are a few things that we can remove. The enemy list can be changed to barrier list. We don't need laser because our barriers don't shoot back. We don't need shield color as our barriers don't really have shields. They are just a one hit. Then let's get rid of all of these variables. We don't need randomize because we're not randomizing anything. And the enemy tile map is going to be barrier tile map. And spawn enemy is going to be spawn barrier. And let's get our barrier tile map. Let's rename that to barrier. And new enemy is going to be new barrier. And of course enemy list needs to be barrier list. And we don't need global aliens because that is for a different script. We do not need the process function. We don't need the move down, we don't need the shoot laser, and we don't need the set state. And We do not need this either because none of that makes sense. And this should be it for the barrier tilemap spawner. Now, if we select the barriers and the barrier list, we're going to add 3. I'm going to select our barrier left instance. I'm going to go to File, Save As. This one is going to be barrier center. And with our sprite selected, I'm going to go to Region. And the offset is going to be 8 on the X. I'm going to Control S to save. And we're going to Save As. This is going to be right. And then I'm going to change this to 16. And Control S to save, and we can close that. Now let me select the barrier tile map. And what we're going to do is select the tile set. I'm going to clear. Then I'm going to click New Tile Set. Then we're going to click the plus icon down here, navigate to Assets, Sprites, Barriers, and Barriers 01. I'm going to click the plus icon here to zoom in. I'm going to click New Atlas. Then I'm just going to left mouse button and drag along. I'm going to go to Snapping Options and make sure it's 8 by 8. And then I'm going to press Ctrl and S to save. I'm going to click on Barriers Node 2D and then Barrier Tile Map again. And now we have the option to draw our tile maps. You'll notice that the cells are set wrong, so I'm going to select cells, change this to 8 by 8, and quadrant size is fine. Now I should be able to draw our tiles. Now what we're going to need to do is select the Barriers 2D, and we need to add our objects to our list. So let's go to Instances, Barriers, add the left, center, and right instances. We're going to press Ctrl S to save. If we playtest now, it'll spawn in just fine, but the enemy won't, because the enemy removed itself. There's something kind of messed up with Godot that I ran into. You might encounter it too, so I'm going to leave it in this video. But the game will not play, because whenever we copied our enemies and enemy tile map, it also kept track of our script, and whenever we changed our script, we lost our export variables. So you're going to have to go back to the enemies, node 2D, and then you're going to have to enter in your enemy list, your laser, which is under Assets, Instances, Lasers, Enemy Laser 01, and the shield color. We're also going to need to enter those in too. And there is a way that we can kind of fix this, or at least we can copy some of the data that we had. I'm just going to put that in, and it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to put in a random value there. I'm going to press Ctrl and S. I'm going to close the Godot editor. I'm going to go back to episode 8, and we're going to go into the Invaders project file, Assets, Scenes, Levels, then click on L1.scene. We're going to scroll down, and what we're looking for is shield color list. I'm just going to copy that. Control C to copy. Then I have to open up the Invaders project file. And then I'm going to go to Assets, Scenes, Levels, Level 1. I'm going to open it with code. You can open it with probably any text editor. Just probably avoid Notepad. Then what I can do is I can press Control and F to search. We're gonna type in shield. And there's our shield color. Go ahead and select that. Press Control and V. Control and S to save. I'm going to close that down. I'm going to open up the Godot editor again. And I'm going to go to Assets, Scenes, Levels, Level 1, and I'm going to select the enemies, and there's our colors back again. So I don't know why it has to forget every time I do this, but this is the second time making this tutorial. Anyway, if we click play to playtest, we should be able to shoot these. And both the enemy and us can remove them. If we get hit, we lose health. And if we play again, it will still be there. And that's the end of this video. In the next episode, I'll show you how to make a bonus enemy. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.